Welcome to Channel 18 News. I'm Jim Rogers. An accident at the 114-mile marker on Interstate 30 Thursday morning slowed traffic through the mid-morning hours. The accident involved an 18-wheeler rear-ended by a small SUV. DPS and Hopkins County Sheriff's deputies closed one lane to traffic to allow emergency services to respond. During the Texas Municipal League 104th Annual Conference and Exhibition at the Austin Convention Center, the City of Sulphur Springs was presented the 2016 Municipal Excellence Award in City Spirit category for cities 25,000 in population, under 25,000 in population. The award recognizes the city for its downtown celebration district. City Manager Mark Maxwell said, "Everyone recognized what we already know. We have a great downtown." Maxwell and members of the City Council are in Austin attending the annual Municipal League Conference. Less than 10 years ago, the City of Sulphur Springs downtown district suffered from high vacancy rates. Today, the district was transformed into a bustling center of economic and social activity through thoughtful design, vision, and investment. According to a news release from the Texas Municipal League, to accomplish the transformation, the city hired experts to help rebrand the city and revive the downtown area. To encourage private investment, the city offered facade grants and installed 3 communal grease traps. Many retailers and restaurants have located in the downtown district, and more are on the way. At the heart of the downtown district is Celebration Plaza, which hosts numerous activities and events each year. The Sulphur Springs Celebration District redevelopment project has brought new life to the entire downtown area, building community pride as well as attracting new residents and businesses. The Texas Municipal League is a voluntary association of 1,150 Texas cities. The primary objective is to serve the needs and advocate the interests of Texas cities.
I've danced with my granddaughter right out in the middle of the street a few times.
Plans for the revitalization of downtown Sulphur Springs.
It's time to do something about downtown, develop a plan and turn it around. And so this
Hopkins County property taxpayers and others interested in the future of Paris Junior College will have 2 opportunities to address questions to Dr. Pam Anglin, president of PJC, regarding the November general election ballot that gives county residents the choice to be a part of the PJC district. The first opportunity is Monday, October 17th, 5:30 p.m. in the Hopkins County Regional Civic Center. She'll present the proposal and answer questions regarding the challenges that lie ahead. The second opportunity, Tuesday, October 18th, at the Republican Party of Hopkins County Bipartisan Candidate Forum. During the candidate forum, Republican incumbent Wade Bartley and challenger Democrat Billy Emerson, both candidates for the office of Precinct 3 Commissioner, will present their statements and answer questions presented through the moderator. Then, Dr. Anglin will have an opportunity to speak. She will present the proposed Paris Junior College Tax District and answer questions from those who are present. According to Donnie Weisenbaker, chairman of the Hopkins County Republican Party, representatives from Texas state legislature's offices will be present also to discuss what the legislature will do or not do in forthcoming years regarding the future of PJC.
After her retirement from many years of teaching high school journalism and sponsoring UIL, Mary Nell Bryant is now teaching again, this time genealogy workshops, like the one she's got set for Saturday, October 15th at the Genealogical Research Library in Sulphur Springs.
we have a follow-up workshop to the one we did in September. This one can be a beginner workshop, or it can be an intermediate level, either one. But we've selected 4 topics that we think people have a real interest in and need to get more information. So we're going to do that. It'll be next Saturday from 9 to 4 at the Genealogical Society Library, which now is inside the public library.
And this will be October 15th.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so Discovering Your Ancestors Part 2.
Right.
Does this subject matter never gets old? In fact, it is constantly refreshing as each person comes along and realizes, hey, I'd like to know about my family.
That's right. And there's a lot more interest, I think, and it grows with genealogy. Of course, the show on TV about that Ancestry and some of those groups, Who Do You Think You Are, I think sparked a lot of interest. People got intrigued by the way they were able to research those families. Of course, they're celebrities and they have the money to pay for that kind of research, but they're still interesting stories, and you can learn a lot about the types of records that they use when they research for those families and explain different things to them. So that kind of sparked an interest, and I think now a lot of people want to learn to do it themselves, and that's what we're going to try to teach.
And do you think maybe when we just kind of come to a certain age in life that it becomes maybe more important to us?
I think so. The older you get, the more you begin to appreciate your roots and your family, and how they traveled across the country or where they came from, and you get a little more interested in that. And then you also get to the point where you want your own family members to have some sense of saving those kinds of documents that are important to them. And you don't hear as much about discovering the old family trunk anymore, because that's not available for a lot of people, but it's the same kind of collection that would have been in that old trunk. So it's really an intriguing thing, and I think the older you get, the more you appreciate it.
Well, let's go over some of the topics that you're going to cover at your workshop on October 15th.
Okay, we're going to do some research on military records. I doubt that there's very many people who don't have some ancestor at one point in time that would have served the country in some way through the service. And so we research all the different kinds of wars and then talk about the records that are available. People want to know if they got bounty land, and then also whether or not they might have gotten a pension for their service. And so I'm going to teach them how to find those kinds of records. We have a lot of books out at the Genealogy Library that are very valuable, and they're not found in a lot of libraries. And so I draw attention to those books and try to get people to understand how to research with those. And of course, now there's a lot of online research and records that are available, especially the War of 1812 pensions have now all been digitized, and those are available to research online. So those kinds of information are what we're going to try to present to the people who come to this workshop.
Okay, so that may be a topic that they would want to research. Or what is collateral line research?
Well, that can go by several other topics. I call it problem solving, essentially. But, when people first start researching, they try to just stay on their own direct line, going back from father to grandfather to great-grandfather, that sort of lineage research. But if you run into a brick wall, which all people eventually do with their own research, sometimes the only way to get around that wall is to go back and search the brothers and sisters. Okay. And so that's what we call collateral research. And you can find a lot of things. If you're searching for an old family Bible, for example, it may not have gotten passed down through your particular line, but, a great-grandmother may have given that Bible to a different sibling, and so you can sometimes make a connection and find old pictures, old Bibles, lots of things that you don't have access to, but they're available if you just know who to look for. So that's why I teach them how to do a cousin finder. Okay. And when you do DNA research, they'll say, well, you're related to this person as either a second through fourth cousin. Well, some people have no clue how you would know who that person is. So there's a chart that's real handy to help people know if they're once removed or twice removed or whatever, if they're a direct cousin. So we talk about that. We talk about making an ancestor chart and then making a sibling chart so that you probably know your own family, even back through your grandfather or grandmother's brothers and sisters. But when you go that generation back from there is where you really find the good information.
Well, would you say that it's maybe like today, there's maybe more than one, child in the family, and one expresses an interest more than another in preserving their family?
That's true.
Or collecting the pictures or keeping the stuff that was handed down to them. So you got to find that.
That's exactly right.
Well, were you mentioning the DNA in the search?
Yeah, the DNA is the hot topic really in genealogy, probably has been for the last 10 years. A lot of people don't know much about it. You watch, the crime scene shows on TV, and of course they're always using DNA for something. But what we're going to talk about is how to use DNA just for genealogy purposes. And there are some testing companies now that are available that are marketing those tests. And I'm going to discuss the different kinds of testing that you can do and what you can actually learn from the test. And a lot of people have hauled off and paid for the test and done those, and they get the results, and then there's no explanation of what to do with the results that you get. So I'm going to show a little bit of how to analyze the results you get, how you can compare yours with somebody else's. And so if you get an email, from somebody that says, hey, I think I'm a fourth cousin through my DNA with you, can you tell me how we're related? Well, if you've done your research and you know the surnames on the family lines, you might be able to make that connection. Otherwise, you're going to have to sit down and analyze your tree and analyze that person's tree and see how closely you do match. But we started off with what we call the Y DNA, which is only for men to do because it's only the paternal line, and it comes down really unchanged from father to son all the way through the generations. And so you can learn a lot with Y DNA. But the women were frustrated because they didn't really have a test that could do that, because the woman's surname changes every generation. And so it's impossible to do the same kind of test that way. But now they've come out with an autosomal test, which men and women can do, and it will go back with matches about 5 generations, which sometimes can help you get past where that brick wall is and help you find, some other people who might be related to you and exchange information. So I'm going to try to help them understand the DNA and why it's important and what it can really do for you, so that you don't waste your money doing a test and then not have some way to understand the results.
Maybe the application of it.
Right.
Well, and then you mentioned internet sources.
Yes. There are more and more internet websites that are popping up that have a lot of genealogy information. Some of them have real records, which is what you really need in genealogy if you want to prove a particular line. A lot of them have just what we call participant information, so that if you sign up for that website and you donate your family tree to them, they make a collection of all those trees and make them public, and people will go in and look at those and find maybe a common ancestor, and then just assume that research is correct and pull it into their family tree. And unless they do the real research, they don't have a way to prove that that's really who their ancestor is. So there are a lot of good websites, and there are a lot that are, I call them scams. You just have to be careful with what kind of information that you pull off of one of those websites. The best websites out there are the ones that have the real records, like the pension records I was talking about. And there are plenty of those out there. There are voter registration records that have been digitized. There are all kinds of particular church records that have been digitized. In a little county down in Alabama, I found a voter registration that gave, I believe it was second or third great-grandfather's actual birth date because he signed it on his voter registration in 1867. And so there are lots of records like that available if you just know how to find those. Anyway, I'm going to give them an overview of a lot of different websites and what they can offer. Some of them are paid websites. You have to have a subscription. And then some of them are just, they're just free to the public if you just know where to look.
This sounds so interesting. And more, these are just brief overviews of the topics.
Right.
But much more than this will be covered in the workshop. And how do they sign up for it?
Yes. They can call the Genealogy Society at 885-8523 and put their name down on the list and go by and pay. The registration fee is $25. Okay. They can call me, but right now we're down to the last few places that are still open. The workshop has been filling up pretty fast, so it's better for them to just call the library and get their name on the list.
And that's the Genealogical Society inside the public library.
Yes.
Now, it's going to be from 9 to 4 that day.
Yes. And we give them an hour and a half for lunch. They can take off and go downtown or anywhere they would, like to go and eat. But basically, we'll have 2 workshops in the morning from 9 until 12, and then break for lunch, and then have the other 2 workshops after lunch.
With the 4 sections, too.
Yes.
Well, and would you say, at the very least, that research such as this is fascinating? It takes you places you might not ever have gone.
It really does. You can travel lots of places and never leave home, especially if you have a computer these days, which most researchers are doing, computerized genealogy research. So it's a fun adventure.
Well, thank you for what you're doing to help launch people on this adventure of their own. And before I let you go, we just have about 2 minutes left to talk, Mary Nell, but you have a strong connection with KSST in our years past.
Yes, I do. I taught journalism at Sulphur Springs for 35 years. And when we started in the early 70s, we had enough students that were interested in radio as well as in the newspaper side of journalism. So I had worked with Brad real close even when I was in high school. And so we tried to revive the radio workshop program. That's what we started with. And then it branched off into the television part because you all had those capabilities. And the students loved it. They could come out here for a couple of days a week and play disc jockey and be on radio workshop. And then they could also come and do the television show that we did, kind of a news feature type program about the high school activities. So, yeah, it was fun. I do have a good connection with KSST.
Here's Don Julian with sports.
Wildcats marching band director Charles McCauley calls October Contest Month. The band will have 4 contests, including UIL competition, in 12 days. The first competition is next Monday at Mineola, and I talked with McCauley about contests and their importance.
You work for all the month of July, or color guard kids and percussion kids started before that, and boom, it's here. It seems like September flies by, and we're ready. We got 4 contests in 12 days, and I think the kids have worked hard, and we're ready to go see what they think of us, and then we'll learn from each one of those.
Tell us the importance of contests and why you do that.
It's huge. For one thing, it's the band is the only ones that are there. So the crowd is there to watch the band, so the crowd's quiet during the performance. Which the first contest for the freshmen is kind of spooky because they're not used to performing with the crowd being quiet because it's not a normal football crowd. So that's a special time. It's for band kids, for bands only. But the biggest thing is we learn. They'll have a judge for percussion, a judge for drum majors, color guard, band judges, and they'll all give us comments, and it'll be stuff we can work on, stuff we can get better. They give out ratings and awards and all that stuff, but that's secondary to what we're going for. We're going to get better, and then, of course, we have UIL on the 18th. So it's all trying to get to UIL. I like these contests because they are broken down into different sections. The percussion will get a sheet and a recording of just them being judged by a percussion professional. and so it'll be specific to what they're doing. Same thing with color guard, and it's just great. I mean, there's 24 bands at this contest, and Tyler Lee, which is a 6A band, is going to be there on Monday. Wills Point, who has made state in 4A finals, I think the last 4 times that they've had the contest at Austin. Well, it's not Austin anymore; it's in San Antonio. Melissa, which is a real up and coming powerhouse. So there's some really good bands that our kids are going to get to see, and that's also good because they get to see bands at their highest level. And it's just a great educational time. It's a fun time. Parents can come and cheer the kids, and it's just a good time all around. But we learn so much. I'll come back that day, and I'll give the percussion sheet to Mr. Garza and the color guard sheet to Ms. Turner, and they'll listen to their recordings. And we come back the next day on Tuesday and get back to work and try to get better.
It's also not unusual for you to come back from a contest and actually tweak some things and make
Absolutely.
some changes.
You know, these early contests are just like having pre-district football games. It's where you're trying to learn before you go the ones that count for UIL. And so we do tweak. I mean, I've changed stuff before, and we always tweak and clean up and change and do things here and there to make us better. The whole goal is to reach our potential and make us as good as we possibly can be.
I would imagine there may be some times when you, in your wisdom, feel like you're right, and maybe the judge doesn't quite have it right, and you probably keep it the way it is.
Well, I don't know how wise I am, but I've been doing this a long time. But sometimes when it gets down to personal, maybe not as far as execution of fundamentals, but if it comes down to a personal choice on whether you want something here or something there, yes, we'll just stay with what we're doing. But most of the time we listen to what they say, and if we have time to tweak it, then we'll tweak it. Saturday the 15th, we're going to Commerce, and that'll be, they don't have a finals. At this first contest, there's a preliminary and a final. So if we are one of the top 7 bands, then we'll perform at 145. And if we're one of the top 7 bands, we'll get to perform twice. And they're bringing in another panel of judges. I've never been to a contest where they've done that before, where they're bringing in an entire different panel. And so I hope we can make finals so we can get 2 different sets of ears and eyes seeing what we're doing, because that's like going to 2 contests. So we hope we get to do that twice. And then on Saturday, there's just it's like UIL, there's no finals. That's at Commerce. And we perform at 8:10 p.m. That will be good for us because it'll help us get ready for UIL, which is on the 18th. And then that's a Tuesday, and then at that contest there are 3 judges only. It is not broken down. So anyway, it's a really fun time. It's kind of packed into because there's 5 Saturdays in October this time. Things are and we're not going to area. It's just been kind of a different schedule for us. Normally every Saturday we're gone somewhere, but this year we decided to go to a new contest on Monday and not go the one at Mount Pleasant this Saturday. So kind of a new schedule, but we thought we'd change things up a little bit.
I get the feeling the band's kind of ahead of the usual pace this year. It seemed like the way they learn the show so quickly.
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, every year's different. You know, we were ahead on drill as far as learning drill and all that. I think we're right where we need to be. I think we're on pace for where we need to be. Some bands went to contest last Saturday, which is, October 1st, awfully early. We've done that before. And then some are going this Saturday. So some of the bands we see at Mineola already have been to 1 or 2 contests. And that's always a little bit of an advantage because they've had those contest jitters out of the way. But I think we're in good shape. I think we're where we need to be at this point. we're not where we need to be for UIL yet, but it's always a breathing, growing, changing thing, and so we'll continue to get better, hopefully, and improve as we go along. And then our last contest is on the 22nd, so we've got 4 contests in 12 days. But it's a fun time, and the parents love it, and I think we're where we need to be at this point. I'm really proud of the work ethic. I'm really proud of everything the kids have done, and we'll go see what we got.
The band's second contest will be at Commerce on October 15th, then UIL competition at Mount Pleasant on October 18th, and one final contest at Prairie Land on October the 22nd. The Wildcats play at Texas High Friday night, and the Tigers are coached again this year by Barry Norton, now in his 18th year. He took over when the program was struggling, and Coach Norton has turned the Tigers into a perennial playoff team. Despite this team's 5-0 record for Texas High, 1-0 in district play, and a number 8 rating in the AP poll, Coach Norton says this team has a long way to go to be a good team. He says the offense has the potential to be very good. Meanwhile, he says the defense just needs to keep plugging along. They have 11 new starters on defense this year. Coach Norton calls them a no-name bunch, but he adds they're playing hard and getting better. Despite being a little smaller than most Texas High defenses, Coach Norton says his defense is quick this year. After allowing Marshall lots of points on the way to an 18-0 lead, the Tigers shut down the Mavericks the rest of the way in a 36-18 Tigers win. The Tigers have a 3-year starter, Cade Pearson, at quarterback. He's a North Texas commit, and Coach Norton says you just can't replace experience. He says receiver Quan Hampton is as good of a player as there is in the district. Coach Norton says the Tigers' offensive line has been solid. They also have 2 very solid running backs and an outstanding second wide receiver. Coach Norton says he respects the Wildcats and their ability to move the football and score points. And he notes that quarterback Ryan Humphreys has thrown for over 1,000 yards. He calls the Wildcats defense an attacking defense. Coach Norton says a Greg Owens coach team will always play hard. He expects a real competitive Wildcat team to come to Tiger Stadium this Friday night. The UIL appears to be considering a 110 pitch count for all high school baseball pitchers, either in one game or one series. Wildcats baseball coach Jared Hammock says it shouldn't have too much impact on his program.
Well, yeah, I think most coaches used common sense and were doing right by their pitchers anyway. There may have been a few out there that, would you hear stories of 150 or, 160, and then if they were in a series, they might come back and throw another game, which obviously is a little bit outlandish. So I don't mind it as a standard. The only issue I have is because we typically, 100 is typically our limit. But when you mention the series, that's where, if say you got a guy through 95 on Thursday and you go to a third game on Saturday and maybe he wants to throw, he's your ace, he wants to throw that last inning, you're up. And so he only gets, hopefully you can get him out in 15 pitches to make the 110 limit. But, if he had to throw 20 to get out of the inning, now all of a sudden you got to bring somebody else in that last inning. But typically you don't, we throw a guy once a week in district, 100, 105 pitches, and then he doesn't have to throw again until the next week. Very rarely would we throw a guy even one inning, say if he threw on Tuesday night, even come back and threw one inning on Friday to close the game out. That's a rarity, but I don't think it's wrong, necessarily. I think that's the standard we're going to in the world we live in today. It kind of protects everybody, coaches and players, alike. But to me, pitch counts are different for everybody. And if you know your pitcher well enough, 50 may be a limit for one guy. 75 might be the limit for another guy. Then you got 100 that may be a limit for a top flight pitcher. So, if you pay enough attention to the game and you know your kids, I think you just use that general rule of thumb. But, I don't have an issue with it. I know they're trying to figure out who's going to keep it. Who's the official pitch counter and how do they report that? And, all those things can be decided by somebody else, I think, besides the coaches. But, I don't have an issue with it as far as the bottom line rule.
Now, you keep it in the dugout, I believe, do you not? Or Eric Buck does that with his staff?
Well, he has it as well, but I keep it as I'm calling pitches, and I update it every, half inning, and so I know where we are. We use the naked eye. Sometimes you can tell if a guy's losing a little bit, then his arm's tired and vulnerable to being hurt, so you take that into account. We use guns a lot, not necessarily just see how hard a guy throws, but if he's throwing 84 most of the game, then all of a sudden he's throwing 80, then again he's in a vulnerable position, and so you can use that to kind of gauge a little bit of what's going on. But it's bottom line about protecting kids. But I tell you what, I read an article that I really agree with, is John Schmaltz. He said he's not worried as much about single game pitch counts. He thinks more damage is being done by playing many more months than we used to play. He thinks, you should take at least 4 months off from playing, but where if you're playing year round constantly, then the damage is being more done that way than just saying, I threw 100 pitches in this game, you know what I'm saying? So I do think that's maybe something to consider as well. Maybe making it mandatory to not play but 9 months. You can't play any more than 9 months a year or 8 months a year because that may be doing more damage.
I think of a big horse like Colby Suggs. Was there ever a tendency to think, well, maybe this big guy can go a little further? Was he on the same strict pitch count?
He was pretty strict. I remember him as a junior, and you may remember this well, and I still stand by it. I think he had reached 100 against Henderson in the playoffs over there, and we went into extra innings, and we didn't let him go back out. And, of course, they scored one run to beat us in that 8th or 9th inning. I don't remember which it was. And I'm sure most people, thinking, why don't we just leave him in? Well, we could have, and he might have gotten into the 120s. And, I just felt like for his safety, maybe more than anything else, that was the right thing to do. Now, you fast forward to the next year, and we were into the playoffs, and I got an email from his dad saying, he'd appreciated that we had taken care of him through the years, and if he needed to go an extra inning in the playoffs, that he was all for it and, go with it. And so, I appreciated that as an opportunity, but at the same time, you still want to look out for their best interests, all of them, but particularly a guy like that is going to pitch at the next level, and then ultimately he's in the the minor leagues, and so you don't want to be a part of a situation that you may be a cause of maybe problems down the road.
Thanks for watching Channel 18 News. Immediately following our newscast, an opportunity to view the Cover Girl dinner held at Plain and Fancy, downtown Silver Springs.